So this lesson is pretty much a review also. And we're going to start by talking about what linear functions are. So a linear function is any function that follows that general format of f of x equals mx plus b, where m and b are constants. And this is the general function for a straight line with a slope of m and a y-intercept of b. So it is important to remember the formula for slope. And the formula for slope is this, the change in the y, which is the rise, okay, because y is our rise, over the change in the run. So rise over a run, that's the change in the y compared to the change in the x. So in advanced functions last year or last time, we used this formula to show the rate of change for a function over any given interval. And we discussed both the average rate of change for a function and the instantaneous rate of change by using that slope formula and adjusting the size of the domain, so the horizontal range of a function. Oops. Okay, so let's look at a specific example. Okay, so we've got this graph of y equals x squared, and we want to determine the secant and the tangent of the graph. So as a reminder, the secant is the line that is created by connecting 2 points on the curve with a straight line, whereas the tangent is the line that only touches a curve at 1 point. So let's start with the secant. Okay, so for the secant, we need to find 2 points on this graph. And so let's take the point where x is -3. So f at -3 equals -3 squared, which is 9. And f at -1 equals -1 squared, which equals 1. And now we're going to use our slope formula to determine the slope. So these are my y values. So I went from 9 to 1 at the same time that I went from -3 to -1. So my slope here is 8 over -2, or just simply -4. After I found my slope, I want to find the equation of the line. So I need to plug my knowns into y equals mx plus b in order to solve for b. As a reminder, it doesn't matter whether or not you choose the first or second point. Okay, I'm going to choose the second point just because it's 1, so that's nice and easy. So the y value is 1. The slope that I calculated was -4, and my x value was -1 plus b. That must mean that my b is equal to -3. And so now I can write the secant, the equation of the secant, to be y equals -4 is my slope, -3 is my y-intercept. Okay, when we're finding the tangent, we're going to do a very similar process, except we don't have these 2 points because we want to know, like, what is it doing exactly right around there. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find f at 1 for sure, because that's my actual point. So f at 1, 1 squared is 1. And then we need to find another point very, very close to this, but not exactly this. So we're going to take f at 1.0001, okay? And that squared is 1.0002001. And I would recommend you just keep this in your calculator. Okay, we do the same next step where we take our first or our second y and we minus our first y. We take our second x, we minus our first x. And that's going to give us a slope of 2. After that, we do the same thing. We want to find our b. So we use our y equals mx plus b formula. We plug in what we know for sure. So we'll pick the definite one without any decimals. So my y was 1, when my slope was 2, and my x was 1. I need to solve for b. Therefore, my b must be -1. And then I write the equation of my tangent at the point x equals 1. So my slope was 2, x minus 1. Okay, so that should all pretty well be review. Okay, let's move on. So we can do this even if we don't have the graph and we're just given a particular interval. So this is the same thing. Okay, now we're going to be looking at this function over the interval. So this is not a coordinate over the interval 1 through -5. So I'm looking at the interval of 1 through -5. So I want to find f at 1 and f at -5. So I'm going to plug that value of x into my formula. So I've got 1 squared plus 3 times 1. That's 4. And then I have -5 squared plus 3 times -5. That's 10. Okay, now I have my 2 points. So now my next step is to find my slope. So I'm going to take my second y minus my first y, my second x minus my first x. This gives me 6 over -6, which can be reduced to -1. And then after I've done that, then I'm going to find the equation of the line by plugging my knowns into my formula. And again, I can use either set of points, not the interval, either set of points. So I'm going to use this first set because it's both positives. So I'm going to put a 4 in for the y. The slope I found to be -1. When y is 4, that means x is 1. So b must be 5. After I'm done all of that, then I put that information for the secant into the equation of the line, and my answer is complete. Okay, and if we want to do the same thing without a graph over at a particular point, so now we're finding a tangent. Okay, so we only have the 1 point. We're going to do the same process we did before, again with this function. Okay, so we definitely want to find f at -1. So I'll put -1 into my formula. Okay, and that gives me a value of -2. And then I want to pick a point that's really, really close to -1, but not quite -1. And there's no set rule on what point this has to be. So 1.001 works, or 0.99 works, or 999 works. Okay, the more decimal places you use, the more accurate it will be. And I'm just plugging this into my formula. Okay, and I have already calculated this. I don't know this in my head, so I had to calculate this in my calculator, and this gives me 1.9899. Okay, my next step is to find the slope. I take my second y, and I subtract my first y. And then I divide it by my second x, subtracting my first x. Sorry, I missed a negative here. Okay, once I calculate that, I'm going to get the answer of 1.01. This inaccuracy here is because I only used 2 decimal places here. So if you used more decimal places, you might get a value of like 1.0001, and you'll see that the slope of the tangent at x equals -1 is approaching 1. So we're going to assume that it is just 1, and then we're going to just find the equation of the tangent using the formula of the line. I'm just going to plug in what I know. So I am definitely going to take this point because it is an actual point. There's no decimals involved with it. So my y value here was -2. The slope that I found was 1. The x value that I used to get that was -1. My b is my unknown. And so b must be 1. And then I write the equation of the tangent. Okay, for practice, you're going to do page 9 and 10, numbers 1 through 8 and 11. Please make sure you do all of those practice problems.